Browns' final practice before we really get into things in week one. They will take the weekend off, and then it's time to get ready for the Dallas Cowboys. But the day started with some news about Deshaun Watson. The Browns restructured his contract once again, Mary Kay, pushing a whole bunch of money forward into the future. And of course, the goal here is always for them to maintain that cap flexibility. And now they have a ton of open cap space.
Yeah, this is something that they've done now for the third straight year. They give him a huge bonus, about $45 million. They lower the base salary to about $1.21 million, thereby clearing a bunch of cap space. And in simple terms, it gives them an opportunity to be flexible in terms of what they want to add to the team, how they might want to re-sign some of their own guys, and also they can roll over cap. What does this mean for the future? He's going to have two enormous cap charges in the next 2 years, about $73 million each. So by this time next year, we will be talking about this again.
Every year, I think, just put it on your calendar. At some point, we're going to talk about this. But, again, when you talk about this roster getting more and more expensive, that flexibility to add guys, people always wonder, why can the Browns just keep paying all these guys? Part of it, Ashley, is freeing up this cap space, moving it forward. It gives them more money to spend than other teams. So this is just something they're going to take advantage of with this giant contract.
Yeah, a big part of it is this is what Andrew Berry is kind of known for doing, and also this team is owned by the Haslams, who are willing to spend that money. I think we all know that's a big part of it as well, in terms of when owners are willing to dole that money out too. But, it's interesting because a few months ago we were talking about how obviously they didn't have to restructure this salary immediately, because Andrew Berry gives himself that much leeway that they could wait, see how things play out, and do it right now and still give themselves plenty of wiggle room as the season starts.
Now, that wasn't the only quarterback news today. The Browns finally decided that 4 quarterbacks was too many. They released Tyler Huntley. Dante Foreman will rejoin the team at running back, so they'll be up to 3 running backs now. At some point, something had to give here, Mary Kay. We didn't know who, we didn't know when, but it turns out it ended up being Tyler Huntley when all was said and done.
Yeah, and they had to release him. They tried to trade him. They've had conversations. They've gotten calls about their quarterbacks, about all 3 of those backup quarterbacks. They've gotten calls about all of them. All the names have been discussed, and they weren't able to make a trade. And part of the reason for that is because 3 other teams, just in the last couple of days, have added to their quarterback room and have either traded for a backup quarterback or signed a backup quarterback. So they let it go as long as they could. Then it got to the point where they really needed to do something. Tyler was released today. Who knows? They might have him back on the practice squad someday. But for now, he's gone. Jameis is still here. DTR is still here. And this is something I found very interesting today. We went back at it with Kevin Stefanski again today, asking him, is DTR the number 3 heading into the Cowboys game? And he said, we'll see.
Yeah,
No, stay tuned.
Yeah, it was the same difference. He has been non-committal regardless, however he said it, about who the number 2 quarterback is going to be, which is interesting. Ashley, look, sometimes Kevin just plays these games, but it's interesting because what we've watched has been Jameis Winston is the number 2, but Kevin just won't come out and say it right now.
Yeah, I think if there wasn't a legitimate argument for this and mixing up the depth chart at quarterback, then these answers wouldn't be quite as interesting, but they're inherently interesting because of the performance Dorian Thompson-Robinson had in the preseason, everything he did throughout camp, and the fact that we know the Browns have always viewed him as their long-term backup ever since he got into the building last year when they drafted him.
Now, we also heard from Denzel Ward today. That was important, of course, because he is now out of the concussion protocol. His 5th concussion, and Mary Kay, he did not waver when he was asked if he thought about maybe hanging it up, if maybe 5 was too many. He stood kind of behind some people he's talked to, some research he's done. Apparently, he's going to change helmets here into a safer brand of helmets. So he's trying to take steps to prevent another concussion, but just interesting that it didn't even seem like it was a discussion that he wasn't going to play football anymore.
No, it wasn't. And I had reported that last week. It was never under consideration for him to quit playing football. He does his research, as you mentioned. He talked things over with his mom, with his brother. They went to Pittsburgh. They talked to concussion specialists. So he put a lot of time into this. He feels good about returning. And as far as concussions go, I would have to think that his have been of the milder variety, which makes this a little bit easier to take, the fact that he is coming back after number 5.
And of course, people are naturally going to be concerned. I do think one of the things he pointed out, Ashley, is the game is safer in the sense of you do have to go through this protocol now. It's not, you get your bell rung and you're out there 3 plays later. So at the very least, while it's certainly fair to be concerned when there's 5 concussions, at the very least, the way they deal with concussions now is much safer.
Yeah, I mean, even within the last 10 years, and of course at all of these games, there's also that independent spotter, that doctor that can say, hey, take this guy off, we're going to get him looked at, even without a player complaining about symptoms or anything like that. And now, as we know, players are going to have the option to wear those guardian caps during games. Still sounds like that's not something Denzel Ward is going to do. We asked him about that again today. This new helmet he thinks he feels more comfortable with in terms of its safety. So lots of methods in terms of how they deal with concussions, how they talk about concussions, and of course that protocol that players really have to work to get their way out of.
All right, a busy getaway day here in front of Labor Day weekend. The players will be back on Monday for practice on Monday morning. We'll cover everything that happened this week, everything moving forward, all at cleveland.com/Browns.